So, good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Brindley, CEO and co-founder of Music Ally, and I explained what we did yesterday, so I don't want to take up too much time because we've got a fantastic panel. I mean, really do mean that. We've got tremendous experts here to talk about what has already been a very interesting area for music, but I suspect it's going to get even more interesting in the years ahead, and we're going to cover both. I want to hear about, I'm sure you want to hear about, case studies that have been successful to date, but also to get some sense of, well, where are the opportunities are going to lie in the future, in the near future, and perhaps even a little further into the future as well. So let's kick off though with some introductions. We'll start with Anne. Just quick intro in terms of who you are, what you do, and your particular interest in the gaming space.
Well, I think Arabian switched seats with me, so I'd be in the hot seat here next to Paul. I see the strategy. My name is Anne McKinnon. I am CEO and co-founder of Wristband. We're a metaverse platform for creators. You can think of it kind of like Grand Theft Auto, minus all the gangs and violence. You go in and there's amazing experiences taking place. We work a lot with NFT artists. There's quests, so you can hang out with your friends and have a great time. Most importantly, too, is we connect it with what's happening in the real world. Working with musicians, so if you have a touring, you can have a quest and extension in the metaverse, looking at new opportunities to connect with new markets like the gaming audience and to offer new experiences to your fans.
And just to clarify, where are you with that right now? People can work with you right now, okay?
Yeah. So we've been doing live VR concerts. I don't know who was out last night at the Reflector, and they had this like crazy music XR experience with the headset on. We've been doing those since 2017. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, the world was canceled for the live music circuit, and same for us, like the tours were canceled, the venues were shut down. We had a lot of people reaching out to say, can you help us with this metaverse thing? So that's when we started to try and do these shows in other platforms. We noticed there's clunky, ugly, blocky, there's no monetization, the user onboarding was terrible. So we started to build our own after loads of prototype events. So that was September last year, we launched Wristband officially. We got an Epic Mega Grant in January, which really changed our lives, and we launched at South by Southwest or Alpha. We're still in Alpha, we're doing loads of community events, and we're working with brands and creatives and kicking off with some activations this fall and community events throughout the summer.
Excellent, thanks very much. Mr. Arabian Prince.
Hi,
how are you?
I'm amazing. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty amazing too. Particularly with the news that our Prime Minister is buggering off. That's made me a lot happier. Anyway. Well, you have quite a background.
We'll be here for a couple hours. Yeah. So I'm just gonna. It's the weirdest thing. So I'm Arabian Prince, one of the founding members of the rap group NWA, but that doesn't matter right now. I've been in the gaming space for 41 years, believe it or not.
And you're only 42 years old.
I know. I'm a lot older than you think, believe it or not. But the quick story is this: when I first started making music at 16 years old. In Compton, we were bad kids, we were partying, we were smoking and drinking and doing all the cool stuff. But at 17, something happened. We would be doing shows or tours, and I noticed that we weren't drinking and smoking as much, but wanting to go to the arcade and play something called Coleco, handheld Coleco video games, and we would bet for money. And me being this young entrepreneur, I was like, wait a minute, this is the new crack. Like, people are not drinking and smoking, they're playing video games. I'm like, I can make money off of this. So instead of me just getting into the fad, I was trying to figure out how to make video games. So I bought computers that you guys have never heard of, Commodore VIC-20, Commodore 64, trash 80s, and I taught myself coding, taught myself how to do sprite animation so I could make video games. And next thing I know, I was doing this with Saban and Vivendi Universal and Fox Interactive in the late 80s and had a parallel career. So I've been in the gaming space for 41 years.
Well, I think you're going to have a few things to say on this. So, and another person who's got a lot to say, quite a background too, Vicki Nauman. Vicki.
Thank you. So I'm Vicki Nauman. I run a consultancy, Cross Border Works, and I work with lots of different companies, mostly on the tech side, helping them make sense of the music industry. But I work with gaming companies, mostly around creating new business models, licensing, figuring out the technology that they have to build to manage the rights, and then really matchmaking between the industry and gaming companies. And I've long been an advocate for music in games, but I think for years, it kind of, like the industry just could not get their head around how they would engage with games, because the digital business teams want to license their entire catalogs to gaming companies, and gaming companies do not want entire catalogs of music. And gaming companies like to pick off 1 and 2 songs here and there, but the synchronization licensing process is so complicated, and less about money, more about time. So there's always been this, this obvious opportunity that gaming is bigger than music and film combined, yet we haven't been able to figure out the killer app. And when Marshmello did the set in Fortnite, that was a game-changing moment in the industry. And I think it was because it was no longer about the digital business teams trying to figure out how to optimize a gaming deal. It was the marketing and A&R teams recognizing that Marshmello could do a single set, and reach 10 million people. And that was a game-changing. And it was the same time that I was starting out working with Beat Saber, when, VR game, and they were still just an independent studio in Prague. And we were trying to get the initial deals done with Imagine Dragons, and a lot of the labels and publishers were just, they were like, oh, this is like, we need a bigger advance. We don't know this game. We don't understand VR. And I just got everyone to take a chance. Look at what Marshmello did. Take a chance on this. This is an opportunity to sell music in the gaming environment. And I remember one of the major publishers, he was like, oh, I just don't want to do this deal. And I just got him to agree to take a chance. And then we wrote them the first check after all the sales. And then he came back. He's like, we love this game. We want to put more of our music in the game.
Hold your thoughts on that one, because that's obviously a good case study, and I want to come to case studies and get a bit more detail in a second. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. Thanks, Vicki. And Otisha, head of gaming,
Hi.
which seems like an appropriate kind of title for this panel at Universal.
Yeah, so hello everyone, and it's really great to meet you guys as well. I know I caught up with you separately, but I'm really happy to be here. And just to touch on my background a little bit, so I very much started out as a consumer. I'm just like a massive gaming fan in general, so I've been playing games since I was about 5 years old. I'm not going to tell you exactly how long that is, but it's at least 20 years. So yeah, I've been playing games since I was a little kid. I always kind of was like, I don't know what this is, but I love it. I don't know how to go into that field. Like when you're that small, you don't really understand what a career step would mean. But anyway, fast forward, I also kind of discovered the love of like marketing and things like this. And so I decided to combine kind of like that passion, but working in the games industry. So my background is in brand and marketing. And I've worked for companies like Sony PlayStation, Warner Brothers Games. One of my favorite games I got to work on was Mortal Kombat 11. So I'm massively into fighting games, if you're wondering, the specific ones I play. I've also worked for like Square Enix, etc. And yeah, for the last just under 18 months, I've been working at Universal Music. And what does my title mean? I think it's one of the first questions people ask me. I guess if we think about the music gaming space and just kind of the things that have already been touched on in this short period of time, it's very broad, like as an area. We know that. And so my role, like the remit of my role is also quite broad. But I think to give you a quick snapshot summary, it would be, looking at strategy in the convergence of these two industries. And I think also when we think of gaming and kind of blending with music and we think about stuff like Fortnite, there are other industries that are also feeding into that and helping to kind of blend that. So it's looking at everything that's sitting in that space and kind of coming up with strategic directions that we can take in terms of exploring that for our labels and also for our artists.
And is it more fun in the music side, or?
Can I just say that this role is, I don't know, it's awesome. Like, I genuinely love what I get to do because I get to talk to so many different amazing people. I probably am more embedded in the games industry now than I actually was when I was working directly in it, which sounds really strange, but, I get to do awesome stuff like this, like meet incredible people who are doing incredible projects.
Cool. Right, well, yeah, let's just kick off with I think, when we were talking before about this panel, I just wanted to get everyone to give a sense of the range of opportunities, particularly that there have been to date. So let's not, look so much about kind of the future for now. But in terms of where the opportunities have been, from, casual games through to the metaverse, what have been the best kind of opportunities that have been exploited in a good way by the music industry to date? What sort of examples would you give, so that people have an idea of what we're talking about, the different platforms, etc.? Who'd like to kick off?
Sure.
Go.
Well, I think this is actually a great question, because if we're talking about the opportunities for artists, unless you are Travis Scott, Ariana, or Marshmello, are there actually opportunities for artists right now in the metaverse? And maybe not so much. So that's why it's really important to look at, is there a metaverse for musicians? Is there something where you can go in as an independent artist without having a $10 million budget and 100 people working on your show like the Ariana Grande one, and actually go in there and greet your fans, be in a credible space where you can track data, you can sell merch, you can reach your audiences. If you have a physical show going on, can you create an extension in the metaverse? Maybe that's a meet and greet, or you're showing your art, or a special quest, because it doesn't really work actually to take a concert that's happening in the real world and to put that in the gaming world. It's very boring if you're on your little avatar going on your screen to watch a smaller screen. It just feels like you're missing out. And I think Otisha is someone who's grown up in gaming in Arabian, doing the show too. It's like you want to have this connection with your audiences. And that's something I've learned a lot from my co-founder, who actually is an independent artist. So the opportunities for artists right now, if we look again at the amazing experiences put on by Epic Games, it's very much this marketing tool. But are they actually making money for those? Is there, revenue and profit generated? That's a big question, because Epic as a platform wants to draw new audiences for Ariana Grande. Specifically, they've had trouble to attract younger female audiences. So again, that was just as much marketing for Ariana Grande as it was for Epic to attract new audiences to Fortnite. Do you guys want to add on to about the opportunities there?
Yeah. So one of my big hits back in the day was a song called Supersonic, my girl group JJ Fat that I wrote and produced. And that song never goes away, right? And we got a call from Harmonix, Dance Dance Revolution, right? Or is it Evolution or Revolution? Yeah, Dance Dance Revolution. And they said, we want to use Supersonic in the game. And the same thing, we were like, okay, how much money are you going to pay us? And they were saying the same thing, because it was new company, new game, small licensing fee, but trust us, we think this is going to be big. And still to this day, I get big checks from Dance Dance Revolution. So I tell every artist, like I mentioned yesterday in a talk I was on, especially independent artists, you have an opportunity to get your music out there even before it hits your record or hits your album. You know what I mean? So look to maximize your music, your style, which could be a little original, something that like a niche. If you have a very niche style, that's a really, really good thing for gaming companies, because they're looking for different types of music, and they can't afford Drake. They can't. You work at Universal, you probably have a hard time like licensing some of the stuff out because the rates are so high. So
how was the music used in the game? I mean, was it like a background track or what?
No, it was a song that they could actually pick to dance to.
Okay.
And in a few other games, they picked it, like Sonic the Hedgehog, they used Supersonic as a background track when you're going through one of the levels. I really love that game. Really, really love that game. No, but that's the key for it. But there's a lot of independent music in these games.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's such a good point. And there's a early stage company that I'm working with called Plus Music, which is it's a plug-in into gaming engines and with music in there. And one of the things that we've really done in analyzing the market is gaming industry, we know the big games, right? We know the big gaming studios, but there's a very, very long tail, very similar to the music industry, where handful of huge companies and then a long middle and long tail of gaming developers. And so we're trying to also do matchmaking of pulling in independent music and matchmaking that with independent game developers, small music, small games, and trying to kind of capture this middle tail, because that's also where they have zero time or patience for the music industry. I've tried to do deals for these kind of middle layer games before. We've gone down the path, gone round and round and round, presented opportunities, and then they say, you know what, we're just going to hire a composer. We're just done. We're done. We don't want to do any of this. And so I think there is a real opportunity to matchmake these independent artists and independent games and really, light these things up, because it's so good for engagement, it's so good for marketing, and there's just, a huge gap between these two industries that we're trying to pull together.
Amazing points from both of you. Just to kind of add on to that, I think one of the core things that you really drew out for me, Rabin, when you were mentioning, is that gaming is very much kind of a long game, not to unintentionally do a pun, but if you think of a game, I guess like Fortnite, I think that was approximately 6 years or so of development. So before the Fortnite that everyone kind of now loves and everyone kind of references all the time, that took how long has that game been out since development to now, at least a decade or so before it's gotten into the position of power that it has now. So these franchises, these amazing games, they don't suddenly kind of just crop up. And sometimes if you're baking in something that's very kind of deeply integrated in music, or opportunities around artists and talent working in a game or working with a game, sometimes these things are kind of literally years out. So they'll have to kind of bank on that opportunity a lot earlier, before kind of there'll be kind of that return, whether it's kind of a big marketing opportunity or a big revenue opportunity or both. So in terms of the opportunities that are there for artists, I think it's understanding that, yes, you've got all your big key franchises, like a Fortnite or doing live performance on Twitch, etc. But these other things, these games that are in the pipeline that are coming up, that are being developed, I think it's also casting a lens to those ones which don't necessarily get all the attention. They don't have as big PR kind of stories behind them, and kind of reaching out, exploring those opportunities. And that's one of the cool things also that I do. It's kind of exploring those broader opportunities that sit outside the kind of, say, the big tier games that everyone's kind of anticipating, because those are really powerful conversations to have. You're talking to development studios who are super passionate and talented about the art forms that they're actually trying to create, and there's lots of development studios and games that have been inspired by the likes of, say, Fortnite and everything that's gone on there, and they want to start to integrate music. But I don't know if you've spoken to or you have any experience with game development companies, but they can be quite competitive. They want to do something completely new. They all want to innovate. So they'll see something and be like, that's great, but how do we make it different? How do we make it better? How do we add more flavor? So there's lots of great conversations that can be had by looking kind of earlier on in the pipeline of development.
Now let's get concrete and talk about actual examples, and it may be something you yourself have worked on. Equally, feel free to talk about something else that you've admired, where you've seen another example that you think, oh, that's a brilliant kind of collaboration. And whether it's not just the sort of big artists, but maybe something smaller scale as well. What kind of case studies would you like to sort of highlight in terms of what you think has worked really well? Otisha, yeah.
Not to try and hard sell Universal, but I was genuinely very impressed by this. As someone who is a gaming fan, but also coming into the company, it was one of the first things that was in front of me when I joined, and it was actually a collaboration which happened in Fortnite. Even though I just said look outside of say some of the bigger IPs, but I think what was really wonderful about it was done via our brand partnerships team, that's our Globe and our Sync team. So it wasn't something that I was heavily involved in or operated. But it was a collaboration between, of course, Epic, Fortnite, also kind of the creative development teams that are external to them that create things within their game in their Fortnite creative mode, if you've heard of that. And it was also via the O2, so a very incredible, iconic live performance venue in the UK, in London. And then also it was a band, kind of a developing band called Easy Life, who are now kind of they've had this tremendous popularity since. But it was this remarkable combination between this massive global game, huge global game, this super iconic venue in the UK, but then also this smaller act that are very kind of UK heavy. So it was wonderful to see kind of the merger. When you think of what can, say, a very specific UK app offer a game at a global scale that want to talk to all audiences, Asian audiences, American audiences, etc. And that kind of just wonderful blend of kind of merging together, it just worked really effectively. Easy Life as a band, they were the first UK. I think they were the first UK act to do anything in Fortnite Creative. But what was so impressive about it that it was so much driven about the music and the actual kind of immersive experience of gameplay alongside the music. It was basically.
Was it a concert? What?
Yeah, so it was sorry, thank you. So in terms of, it was basically, the venue was completely recreated inside of Fortnite Creative Mode. You were then able to access a live concert, which was via Easy Live. So they had an album, which also launched in conjunction around that time. And you could go through each of the kind of core album tracks and see them performing live, but it was also completely like this immersive digital environment around you. So you could explore the O2 Arena venue, but you could also explore each of the live performances for the individual tracks. So if you think of like a consumer also going into the O2 Arena, you kind of walk through and explore the actual venue itself, but then also being able to have a touch point with the artist and also their music in a really in-depth way. So it's one of the most immersive performances and experiences in general that I had seen in Fortnite, even comparison to something like as big as, say, Travis Scott or what Marshmello had done. So that's why for me it stands out as being just a really powerful performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are hundreds of thousands of artists, but also venues and managers and various stakeholders in the music industry who want to be a part of the music metaverse to unlock the opportunities presented there to reach new markets, to unlock new revenue sources, to create and use it as like a new tool. So a lot of our early events were about accessibility and creating the tools. And actually Music Alley wrote a great article on the tools that we're creating for artists. So we learned when we did Sanzar, Sciencespace, AltSpace VR, learning, okay, what do we actually need as we're using these other platforms? We learned, well, we need production channels. We need to be able to mute audience. We need to be able to change the volume. We need to be able to at first we were putting everyone by the main area, but then we learned, actually it's better to start them at the edge of the city because then they have that experience of ritual, which is when you go to a festival or event, you arrive, you get lost, you find your way, you bump into someone, you see someone wearing that band t-shirt that you love, and you become friends, and you go to the next event together. So all these things that, encourage people to get together, to meet new people. We also had a host, and we found that this was really important as we started to do events in wristband, which is when you go into a lot of other platforms like Sandbox or Decentraland, someone might insult you, or there might be no one there. So when you get in and you're kind of looking around and you're thinking like, what is my purpose in this space? It's really important to have a host that goes, hey, Arabian, like, I love that set you did last night. It was great. Or Otisha, like, let's go play that game again. That was so much fun last time. And they're like, oh yeah, like I'm a person here. And like, they say you need to get to the main stage. And if you don't know how to press WASD to move your avatar around, then there'll be someone to kind of onboard you into the process. And this whole atmosphere of saying, I'm here to help you, this is a social event, then that becomes a catalyst for the kind of vibe and mood that you're creating. So it becomes this really positive experience where it's okay to experiment, it's okay to get stuck, it's okay to reach out to other people. And then we also learned, we worked with this broadcaster in LA, they're just on Hollywood Boulevard, called Dash Radio. They have about 80 stations and 18 million monthly listeners. We're thinking, how can we create an interactive experience in the metaverse that kind of reflects radio and broadcast? So we actually took some of their stations and created these hubs around wristband that reflected like different genres. Just as you're walking around a city, you might have like, your Latin corridor, you might have, like you're going to see some hip hop shows like at the Shrine in LA. And then you go and we broadcast that into the real world, into wristband. But then we also had Toby Lynn, she's a host on Amazing Radio, also in Los Angeles. And she was our host in wristband, and we were able to stream that out into the real world. So thinking about that experience, if someone's driving in their car, listening to this radio, then they can jump on their phone and watch it on Twitch. They get the link, because we use pixel streaming, so in the future, definitely you're not going to have to download any games. It's all going to be through your browser, and very much a metaverse browser designed for these experiences. So you can click on that link and then jump in as your avatar. So you're having this frictionless experience across devices, and that makes it accessible for the artist, accessible for fans, having the production tools you need, and having this ecosystem where you have the different stakeholders. A lot of it also, as a final point, is about, as an artist's career, you also, at some stage in your career, also really count on that team to support you. So I think a lot of platforms are looking at cutting out the middlemen, as they might be called, but you actually need a manager to support you, and you need someone helping you with social media and to plan the tours. So having those, again, the existing music industry and stakeholders to be able to onboard into wristband, it's really crucial to support the artist as well.
Cool. Yep.
I think this is really good points in there, and an example that I can share is working with Beat Saber from the early days. And when we first were starting out, nobody really understood VR in the industry. No traditional stakeholders. They didn't understand the value of VR. Didn't understand what we were trying to do, which was really, if you buy the game, there's free-to-play music, which is mostly one of the founders and some of his friends that collaborate and make electronic music. But then we have these packs that you can sell. And we started out with Monster Cat, and then our first big pack was with Universal and Imagine Dragons. And as we were making the rounds, we had a short list of bands that we wanted to integrate into the game. And I truly believe in this industry around self-selection. You want to find partners. You want to find people who believe in what your product is and what you're doing. Because if you're dragging someone into your world, it's just never really going to work. And so we worked with the band. We had Imagine Dragons on stage at E3 announcing this. So the band was super excited. The bands are all gamers. But we had many different times where we were meeting with bands and management about Beat Saber, and there was one in particular that we really thought would make great gameplay. And we talked to the managers, and they listened to the whole pitch, and they said, well, the biggest problem is the band hates games. They hate all games. And we're like, all games? Every single game? And you're like, yeah, they hate games. And so we were like, well, we could have tried to push that through, but ultimately, if the band isn't excited, then we felt like they're not going to post videos playing their music in the game, which is part of what gets people excited to buy the music. And so, we had to just take an approach where, we had a short list, and we just rolled through them, talked to the managers, talked to the labels, find out who's interested. If you're not interested, let it go, move on to the next. And then we've been able to, over time, to work with some of the biggest bands in the world. We did BTS and Billie Eilish and all sorts of rock bands. Like rock music tends to do really, really well because it's a rhythm game.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about reach. This is about making good money, isn't it? And I know you can't be too indiscreet, but maybe you could give an indication of, because I was a bit kind of gobsmacked when you told me.
Yeah,
it's good numbers.
Yeah, really, really good numbers. I don't know where we are now on the total track sales, but on average, we sell more than 5 million songs on every release, and people are buying the songs at $1.99 if they buy them individually, or if you buy them as a bundle, you get a little bit of a discount, so you get like 10 songs for $12.99.
Who needs streaming?
There's real money there, and what's also really great is it's intentional, and so it isn't like in a streaming model where you kind of you have a little bit of everything, and you can find this is we release packs, and those fans go in there and they immediately start buying the music and playing it. We don't right now have data on the actual plays and which songs do better, but we have found that it almost is irrespective of artists, but what really, really works is when we get the rhythm and the gameplay right. And like we did this thing with Green Day, and it's so good because you have the haptic controllers. So when we integrate the gameplay, you're slashing these boxes in VR that are coming at you. And so we really got this right with Green Day and some of their songs. So when there's a drum solo, you feel it, with the haptic controllers, and so it feels like you're playing the drums when you slash the boxes right. So it's just so satisfying, and it's changed how I think of the songs that are in Beat Saber. Now when I hear Imagine Dragons, I think of Beat Saber.
Cool. Arabian, what?
So it's funny she mentioned something on how certain bands don't get it or didn't get it, don't like games, and you see that flip on something that you said about when they find out how much money they can make, they change up. Because early on, we were working on a couple of games. I think it was Simpsons Hit and Run and Batman, I think. And Batman was Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo. And then I think The Simpsons was Hans Zimmer. which is like the biggest, like there is no one bigger when it comes to doing any kind of music and film. He didn't get it. So it was in the original Simpsons, but in the game, he did not want his piece of music in the game. And we were like, huh? Like, but it's part of The Simpsons. And he goes, that's my art. I don't want it in the game. And same thing with Danny Elfman early on. But we replaced the music. We used something else. The game was a huge success. And then we get a call from their management later on for the next game. And like, oh, yeah, Hans Zimmer wants to put his music in the game now.
Well, it's actually really funny because that same rock band, which was huge in the 90s, the same rock band that said, the manager was like, they hate games. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Now they're like, well, now that this is more established, now we're curious. Now
we want money.
Now, exactly.
Some of these opportunities do sound a little bit like they cost quite a lot of money as well, right? I mean, is it really that open, you think, for sort of, more up-and-coming artists as well? I mean, obviously, we've already cited some of the big examples of the massive concerts in Fortnite, et cetera, but, is this an open space that the up-and-coming artists can play in affordably?
I think so. But they have to want it.
Yeah.
The artist has to be hungry. You've got to get your product out there one way or the other. I always tell people, social media is like the biggest tool for artists right now. Everything from TikTok to Instagram. If you get your stuff out there, if you're getting your music around to influencers that use your music, like if you can get, as an independent artist, if you can get one of your songs with one of these big social media influencers that's doing dances or doing something stupid or whatever that has a huge base, your song gets attached to that artist or to that social media influencer who has this huge following. And now you'll see a tick in your sales. And then next thing you know...
Am I going to need an agency to, how am I going to find that opportunity in the first place?
I mean, either direct on social media and getting lucky or going through an agency or getting your songs to a publisher, Yeah.
It's hard though because again we've got the short list of the really really big gaming studios, but then all these other games, there's tons of engagement, but those games, those middle and small games, they're not making the rounds in the industry to try to figure out how to do licensing. They're either hiring composers or they're not using music at all, and that's where I think there is a really really significant opportunity for independent artists. And you don't oftentimes want in a game, you don't necessarily want the big top Billboard hits because it's about enhancing gameplay. But I think for independent artists, people play games for hours and hours and hours and day after day after day. So you really do get incredible exposure to gamers when you get your music integrated.
I'm gonna say one quick thing too. And gamers are gamers, and they a lot of times don't like big artists in their games. They don't want it because this is just a social marketing thing. It's a marketing thing. That's why they got Drake. They might not buy the game if Drake's in the game.
I had that exact same thing happen with a gaming platform where they had the guy who ran the company was this huge fan of an artist. They go and do a deal, spend a lot of money, they integrate that artist's music in the game. The community rebelled and they hated it. And they said, this is too commercial, we don't like it. And so the end result was that made the whole gaming company and the gaming platform pull back. And because they're like, it's totally backfired on us. Our users rebelled. They didn't like it. We spent a lot of money. It was a huge failure. And that's really hard to regain confidence around doing things with music.
There was the Ariana Grande event in Fortnite. It was actually, who attended that? Okay, so one thing you might have noticed is that while that concert was on for 10 minutes, Fortnite stopped. So everyone who was playing Fortnite was actually bumped into the Ariana Grande game. And I had like a window open on YouTube, I had a window open on the game, I was like following comments on social media, and gamers were just like wanting to get back to their game. So they were kind of like, okay, like I guess like 10 minutes, but there was like people trying to stream and they had this interruption. So it doesn't always work to have, a concert of any artist in a gaming experience with the wrong audience.
It's a pretty blunt approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't get more blunt than that.
But
sorry. Go
Oh yeah, just wrap up super quick there. You asked about accessibility, and I think like on publishing, it's something maybe I'm not as familiar with, but within wristband, we're trying to make a lot of templates. So right now we have a couple venues, we have galleries, we have quest systems. So the idea is that just as simple as like creating a WordPress website these days,
Right.
or using Squarespace, is they can say, hey, like I want to have a gallery experience to showcase the upcoming artwork for my album, and I'm going to sell some of those as NFTs. Or I'm going to have a digital merch area, and like you can dress up your avatar as you're going to this gallery, and we're going to do a meet and greet with small groups where I can directly speak with my fans. And that's something that should be really easy. A couple clicks, you deploy it, schedule it, and send it out to your fans. So that's, again, making it really accessible
Cool.
for everyone.
Yeah.
I think just building on your point earlier, Arabian, when you talked about kind of artists that are trying to explore these opportunities and they need to kind of really want it and be kind of passionate and driving that as well. I think, yeah, that is completely true. I think, and everything that's kind of been pretty much summarized here, the authenticity match is really important. So like when it comes to kind of whether it's smaller studios or studios who are a bit less experienced with the licensing hurdles, et cetera, that can happen. It's like if you can take a good idea or the stems of a good idea to someone and you're passionate about that and you actually know their product, you know what they're doing, you understand their audience and you understand kind of the identity of their product, and you kind of can start a spark of an idea. If you can get someone passionate and excited about what you're talking about, they can make things happen. So a lack of, say, like experiencing and kind of working things out it's not going to be a hurdle if that genuine idea and that connection is there. So I think that's really important. I think sometimes it can be very much because gaming as a kind of entire industry is so big, and because there's games like Fortnite which can take up a lot of kind of the conversation around what it is you could actually do in a game. You have sometimes people going towards a project and expecting the games company to come up with all the ideas and tell them everything that they can do and this is what you can do and this is how you're going to do it. Whereas actually going in the other direction and truly understanding that product or that brand, etc., and saying, actually, I really love your brand. Maybe you're not a big developing artist, a big superstar artist, but you're developing out. But I really love your product. I really was thinking, actually, can we do this from like a fan point of view? And you'll be surprised how good a response that actually gets. And I also have directly had experiences like that in terms of talking to certain games companies who are trying to kind of integrate a lot more music experiences in their game. And when I say music, it's not just necessarily putting a song in the game, and it's not just necessarily doing a music performance. They are trying to come up with like innovations. They're trying to do something unique, and they want people who are just as excited as them about exploring that area, and they're happy to kind of ideate with you. So.
Cool. So we've talked about all the opportunities for artists, and I'm conscious we're at an event which is really about startups and innovation. So I just want to end with the last few minutes of your thoughts in terms of where are the opportunities for startups in terms of innovating. Where would you like to see innovation take place in this space?
I guess, well, I'm the startup here. So, the metaverse is actually made up of a lot of different technologies. So from motion capture to networking, avatars, animation, there's so much that goes into it. And the reason why this is all possible today is because these technologies are converging. So for us as a startup, it would crush us if we were to develop every single one of those things. So what we've learned very quickly is to work with the best partners and look at the long term and work together. So to focus on that and say, what's the most efficient way for us to create something incredible? And partnering with the right people makes a huge difference, especially in the Epic Mega Grant recipient community. We have a special Discord, and the whole idea that in the future, interoperability is like, loads of games are made out of Unreal Engine. We can plug any of those into wristband as long as there's a certain theme around wristband, just like you go to Disneyland and there's loads of different rides. You can have the same thing. You can like plug in different experiences by different artists, different creatives, different games even into wristband. And I guess the last thing too is like there's so many different opportunities. It's just like artist careers. You can do 10 different things every day, but to focus on doing one thing really, really well and think about who's your audience, what is the value you're giving to them, and what kind of culture and atmosphere and impact are you making?
Cool. Rabian?
Yeah, I would like to see an open source platform for artists to be able to showcase their music in different ways. You know what I mean? Like right now, you have to figure out how to get your music into certain different places. But I would really like to see like a platform where all artists, independent or majors or whatever, could just throw their music into categories somewhere without going through a publisher or something like that. Because like I said, publishers are even at the point now where they're getting picky and choosy on what they take. And I think that's wrong, because I don't believe that a publisher, a company should be acting as a director or a producer of your music. Because, everybody's biased, right? I love all music. I keep open mind as much as I can, but I may not like country western as much as I like rap or something else. So I don't want somebody saying, well, we don't like that artist and we're not going to take that in. But that might be the perfect music for this particular game or for this particular project. So I want to see the doors open more to everything so that everyone has a fair chance, to succeed. So
Cool. Sounds very Web3 to me.
Yeah, and I, whether it's metaverse or gaming, I think that what I always try to do is when there's early stage companies that I'm working with, I always try to marry them up with kind of, the right sized music partners, because that's also something where you got to get product market fit. Once you have product market fit, then I think if you get attachment and if you get the right level of engagement, then you can go. Then it's time to go talk to the major labels. But cut your teeth and figure out how to really engage users, find really good music partners. I have a whole slew of companies that do like one-stops where they have small catalogs, maybe publishers that own the master or master recordings that control the publishing. And I try to ease early stage companies doing music right from the start, but not jumping in before you're ready. Because if you go and talk to a major label and you haven't gotten product market fit yet, it's going to be a really hard conversation, because they're going to want to know, what's your engagement like? How are your fans using the platform? But I do feel like with gaming in particular, we're just at the beginning, because I think in the past, a lot of these games have just said no to music, and we're at a really, really exciting cross-section between gaming, which is then feeding into metaverse.
Okay, otisha.
I think there's a lot in terms of that's available online to kind of digest about where all the trends are, where all the opportunities are in gaming or metaverse space, or all these terms that kind of get drawn into kind of one blanket together. So I think the main thing is there's lots of impressive stats about kind of revenue opportunities, etc. But don't try to avoid looking at those in isolation. Like if you think of like microtransactions and all the different variety of digital kind of currency opportunities, like it's very easy to kind of like look at some of the stats coming out of that and look at it completely in isolation. And one of the fundamental things I think to learn from the games industry that it does incredibly well is, one, it was pretty much built by just people that are incredibly passionate about making video games. So it's finding whatever out of all the opportunities. You don't have to pick every single thing or try to merge everything. Pick something you're going to be very incredibly passionate about driving, that you can kind of really steer a great vision behind. Kind of a lot to kind of Anne's point earlier, pick something that you know that you really want to drive and be focused on. And also then it's you need to really be genuinely wanting to connect with the communities that then form around whatever kind of art form or area that you've then kind of gone on to develop. That desire to connect to your audience, to connect to your community is so important, because they're the thread that really is going to carry whatever the project is. That's probably my point.
Do we have time for a question? Or? Yeah, we do. A golden question from the audience. No pressure.
Anybody except Ted.
Okay. Anybody want to come out with a killer question?
Ted?
No? All right, look, all right, I'll do a very last quick one. What would you point towards in the future that's going to be most exciting technology-wise for music and games? Just sort of, just quick one each.
Yeah, I think artists are usually the ones that make the most beautiful things with early stage tech that we're all trying to figure out. So I think that what we're going to see that's most exciting in the future is not things that tech companies are going to come out with, but actually giving those tools to artists and seeing what they experiment with. That's going to be really incredible to see come to life.
Okay, cool.
Metaverse and NFTs. That's going to be the greatest thing for artists. If they can figure it out, they can make a lot of money.
Cool.
I totally agree on the Web3 and Metaverse. And what's interesting about all of the platforms, whether it's NFTs, crypto, metaverse, alternative worlds, they're all building creator tools directly into their platforms. So they're not really setting themselves up to go and do B2B licensing. They're assuming that independent creators and musical creators are just going to come in, drop in, and engage with users in the platform. And that's great if you control all your rights, if you're an independent artist. If you have a complex right structure and you have 10 writers on every song, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult, but that's where I think the relationship between what the artist wants to do and how their label and their publishers all work together to enable that artist's dream. That's going to happen that way because all of these new metaverse platforms are assuming that artists are going to engage directly with the platform.
Yeah, I probably agree with everyone's points, but to avoid repetition, I think another thing I'm personally very excited about is actually just less about the focus on video games themselves, and actually how gaming technology and kind of some of the principles of gaming can completely transform the physical, in real life music experiences. We've seen the stuff that happened during, lockdown when people were doing these digital concerts, but I really want to see what mixed reality technology, et cetera, and all these different forms can do in real life and just create something completely immersive, completely interactive. That's what I want to see.
Cool, and I'll just finish off by adding, I'm getting quite excited by the prospect of smart glasses becoming like the new mobile phone. Mobile phones actually becoming obsolete as smart glasses take over, which is, what a lot of people are talking about. And what does that mean for music? Well, that's a whole kind of panel in itself. Haven't quite got time for that now. Just remains for me to thank you all so much for your great, insightful ideas today. And hope you enjoyed it. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.